Hello, today we will say something very interesting. If you have worked with Angular, you should be familiar with this syntax where we have a class and there is this kind of syntax with add component accepting one JSON object. And during the interviews, I always like to ask this to candidates like, is this syntax specific to Angular only? Most of them say yes. And that's the thing here. Like, it's not something specific to Angular. This is a feature from TypeScript called decorators. So, decorators is a function that you can attach to a different items. It can be attached to a class similar to here. So, this add component is nothing but a decorator, class decorator. You can have a method decorator, accessor, property, or a parameter decorator as well. So in this video, we will see about only class decorator, but you should go ahead and check out this handbook with the different types of decorator. Okay, let's go to our playground and let me go to logs first. Nothing is there, everything is clean, cool. So first thing I want to do is I want to write a simple class. So I would say class user component, and I will just put a simple constructor there, console.log user component call, and I will create an object user component is equal to new user component. That's it. If I run this, you can see the console is printing the statement from the constructor. Whenever you create a constructor is called and the message is printed. And now I want to write a simple decorator. So what I will say, I would say this is like a super component, and I will write a function, a global function called super component, and I would say console.log super component decorator call. Now, this is a regular function. There is nothing special here. And in TypeScript, if you want to mark this function as a decorator, you need to pass a constructor as a function parameter here. So this will be a function parameter called constructor here. And now I will keep the statement here. Let me clean the console log and let's see what happens. Look at the log sequence. First, a super component decorator called is printed and then constructor is printed. That means even before object is initialized, even before the constructor is called, you get a chance to modify or do something with this decorator. And that is why in Angular, you specify some configuration which Angular register in its memory and use it for this different purpose like resolving component or the injecting services and so on. So if I go back to my code, what I can do is just to show the power of decorator, let's have a public property called user count type number is equal to 0, and let me print it out console.log user component dot user count, clean the output, and we have the user count at 0. Now what you can do is you can call a function here. Just one second, I will try to call. So my goal is I want to set user count variable inside the decorator. So my purpose is like I want to do some kind of manipulation of user component properties in decorator, even not in constructor. So how can we do that? Let's see. So what do we have here? So we have a constructor. Can I directly call user count here? Let's say 100. This will not work because user count is not known here. What we can do, a TypeScript offers a way where you can pass parameterized constructor to the decorator function. So this is a syntax for passing the constructor as a parameter here. So I will pass this one here, and you're supposed to return the new definition of constructor. So here I will just comment it out, and I will return constructor here. But notice that earlier we marked this constructor as type function. Let me zoom out a bit. Earlier we had constructor of type function, but now we have to mark it as type, generic type T. And here I will just put my console log again, and okay, we will see why it's giving us error. And let me take this out. I will put it here, and I will set user count 100 in this one. Let me zoom in again. So clean the output and run it again. Now notice here, let me put it user count is equal to user count. So what happened here? If we follow the code, we have a class. In this class, we have user count public property with a default value 0. In constructor, we are just printing out the message. This class has a class decorator called super component. You can give any name here, except it is not if it is not reserved. And then you can put a syntax of the constructor that we are going to accept a constructor and return a new definition of constructor. And while returning, I can either modify it or I can do something more here as well. So what I did, I'm able to access the user component here, and I can just override this value to 100. Okay. So this is the power of decorator. Now let's try something else. In Angular, you can see like you have a selector, right? A component accept selector property, and this selector property is used in the HTML. And that HTML resolves this selector to the component. So how does it work? In a very simple way, we will try to mimic it. What we can do is, let's say we put a, let's, one second. What we can do is we will just comment this out for a while. We will have a component map of type string comma string. In real life, it would be a complex type, but for simplicity, we will just keep it here. And I would have function called list all components. So what I want to do, I want to have list all registered components here. So let's print all the components here. Let's say components is equal to component map dot entries, and I would just say console.log, and I will just print out in components. Okay, so this is our idea. Now we need to define a component. So let's get our component back here. I would call it a super component again. And I have a constructor, public property. Now I need a decorator where I can provide function super component. And here I want to except some kind of parameters. So I would say config, and this is of type record string comma string. In other video, I have explained the record and map types. So please go do and check it out. And this function, as we said, we are passing object. So let's pass object here. First key we will pass is like app root here. And since we are passing object to this decorator, we need to return a function. So let's return a function target function. And here we can print out the config. So let's go and print console.log config. Okay, so for what we have done, we created a component, we defined a decorator, and in this decorator, we are just trying to print the values of the config. Let's see if we get this value running. Okay, so we got selector here. Now, what I want to do is I want to register this selector into my component map. Okay, for that, I can say component map.set, and here I can pass key as selector, and I can pass value as config.selector. With this, I should be able to set values inside my component map. And if I call function list all components outside, I should be able to see the list of all the components registered here. So clean this out, run it, and we got selection here. Okay, but is so this is a selector here, app root. What we can do here is we can change something like this. The key we will keep as the selector value, and the value we will pass it as let's say a type. So I can pass a target function here, and I can change this to function. Let's clean this one and run it. Okay, so now we have it. We have a key as app root, and it will return your constructor function. So in a runtime, you can get this constructor function and create a new instance dynamically. What does it mean? Let me create another component class, let's say post component, and I will have this empty body, or just post is equal to empty array, and I will put again super component decorator here, and I will say selector is equal to app posts. And now if I clean this one again and I run this, I should have two entries in my root registry, in my component registry. What if we create a third component, let's say to-dos, and I keep the same post, same selector as app post. So we have the duplicate keys here, right? So this app post is getting replaced with the to-dos one, and this is not what we want. So you can add another check here, if component map dot heads, and here we can pass config dot selector, and we can say not, so that we negate it. And let me put else, we print out console dot error component with key already registered. And here you can print out key config.selector. And let's see if it works. Okay, so what do we have? If we have key, then we print out here. If it not, we print out here. So, but the output is still wrong. We are still getting to do's. So let's fix it. Okay, so why we are getting this error? Let's go through the code. So if a component map has config.selector, okay, there is a typo. We are missing C here, selector, here, selector, yeah, typo, selector. And now if I clean this, and if I run this one now, yeah. So we have a selector. Let me remove this console log here and clean it again and run one more time. We have two entries, app root, which is pointing to user component, app post, which points to post component, and the third time you're trying to add this component with the same selector, we get an error that component with the key is already registered, and this is a key name. So in very simpler way, when you create Angular project and you define components, you pass this kind of selector and decorator, component decorator, it makes sure Angular knows about this kind of mapping so that in the application, when you go to the different project, let me go to the some kind of complex project, maybe here. Okay, so here you can see there is a selector app child, and in the HTML, in the another component, when you put the selector here with the syntax, Angular use this kind of mapping, like, okay, for selector ID this, I need to resolve a component, child component here. So this is how you can use selector. Now, what else you can do with selector? As I said, you can have the property selector. So you may have seen in Angular, you have at input, some property name like the user ID number. At output, you can define user updated is equal to new event emitter, and you can pass user object here. So the syntax you see here, at input, at output, these are also decorator. There is a definition in Angular library. You can go and check it out if you're interested. But this property, input property and output property, decorator adds some more value to this one. So you can see here there are some kind of method decorators are here. Access decorator, this is what I was talking about. No, this is the getter setter. And here is a property declaration here. So property decorators, this is like at input or at input output. So that's it about decorators. It's very important that you understand this decorator concept, as this is not just in Angular. There are other frameworks like Nest.js, Node.js. You can use this kind of decorator concept and take it to the new level. Thank you.